The rain outside the window of orbital station Hannah 7 was not real. It was a holographic projection meant to comfort the humans who lived there, far away from Earth. But Taiho still liked to watch it while he cooked dinner. It reminded him of home. He stood in the small kitchen of his shared apartment, stirring a pot of ramen. The noodles were almost ready. The smell of spicy broth filled the room, and he smiled to himself. This was his favorite part of the day. The work was done. The lab reports were filed. Now he could just relax behind him. Sitting at the common table was his roommate. Her name was Lyra. She had been living with him for 3 months now, ever since the housing department paired them together. She was a Valorian, a member of an alien species known throughout the galaxy for their intelligence and logic. They were also known for something else. They did not feel emotions the way humans did. Lyra had pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly in the dim light. Her eyes were silver, like polished metal, and they moved quickly whenever she was thinking hard about something. Her hair was white and cut short, practical and neat. Everything about her was practical and neat. That was the Valorian way. Tonight, she was watching something on her tablet. Taiho could hear the sounds of dramatic music and crying voices coming from the small speaker. He glanced over his shoulder and saw colorful images flashing on her screen. It looked like a human drama, one of those romantic shows that were popular back on Earth. He raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Lyra often watched human media. She said it was for research. She was studying human social behavior as part of her work on the station. Taiho thought she secretly enjoyed it, but he would never say that out loud. Valorians did not like being told they enjoyed things. He turned back to his noodles and added some green onions on top. Perfect. He poured the ramen into 2 bowls and carried them to the table. He placed one bowl in front of Lyra and sat down across from her with his own. Lyra looked up from her tablet. She stared at the bowl for a moment, then at Taiho. "You made food for me," she said. It was not a question. It was an observation, Taiho said, picking up his chopsticks. "I always make enough for 2. You know that," Lyra said. "But I still find it strange." "What's strange about it?" "On my planet, we do not share food unless there is a specific reason. A transaction. An agreement. But you share food with me every night, and you ask for nothing in return." Da-da-da-da-da-da. Taiho shrugged. "That's just what roommates do. At least, human roommates." Lyra tilted her head. It was a habit she had, something she did whenever she was confused or curious. Taiho had come to find it endearing, though he never told her that either. She picked up her chopsticks and began to eat. For a few minutes they ate in comfortable silence. The fake rain continued to fall outside the window. The station hummed quietly around them. Then Lyra spoke again. "Taiho," she said, her voice carrying that clinical tone he had grown used to. "I require clarification." He looked up from his bowl. "Sure. What's up?" "I have been watching this human visual narrative." She gestured toward her tablet. "The characters behave in ways I do not understand. They make choices that seem irrational. They sacrifice their goals and their comfort for each other. One male character traveled across 3 continents to find a female he had only met 1 time. He spent all his money. He lost his job. He risked everything." She paused, her silver eyes narrowing with genuine confusion. "And all of this," she continued, "was because of something they call love. They use this word constantly. They say they are in love. They say they love each other. They say love is the most important thing in the universe." Taiho set down his chopsticks. He could tell this was not just a casual question. Lyra was truly puzzled. "Okay," he said slowly. "What do you want to know?" "I want to know what love is," Lyra said, "and why humans pursue it." Taiho leaned back in his chair. That was a big question. Maybe the biggest question anyone could ask? Well, he began. "Love is. It's a feeling. A really strong feeling. When you love someone, you care about them more than you care about yourself. You want them to be happy. You want to be near them. You think about them all the time, even when you're supposed to be thinking about other things." Lyra frowned. "That sounds like an obsession. A malfunction of the brain." Taiho laughed softly. Yeah, I guess it kinda is. But it's a good malfunction. At least, it feels good. But why? Lyra pressed. What is the purpose? On my planet, we bond with others for reproduction and mutual benefit. It is logical. It is efficient. But this love you describe seems to be inefficient. It causes pain. It causes people to act against their own interests. I have watched these dramas, and the characters cry constantly. They suffer. They lose sleep. They cannot focus on their work. She shook her head, genuinely baffled. Why would anyone choose to feel something so painful? Taiho was quiet for a moment. He looked at Lyra, really looked at her. In the 3 months they had lived together, he had learned a lot about her. He knew she woke up at exactly the same time every morning. He knew she organized her data files by color. He knew she secretly liked the taste of honey in her tea, even though she claimed she only drank it for the health benefits. And he knew that underneath all that logic and efficiency, there was something else. Something curious. Something almost hopeful. Because Taiho said finally, love isn't just about pain. It's also about joy. It's about having someone who understands you. Someone who makes you feel like you're not alone in the universe. And when you find that person, all the pain and the crying and the lost sleep, it's worth it. Lyra stared at him. Her silver eyes were unreadable. That does not make logical sense, she said. No, Taiho agreed. It doesn't, but not everything has to make sense to be real. Lyra was silent for a long time. She looked down at her bowl of ramen, then back at her tablet where the drama was still playing. The characters on screen were hugging each other, tears streaming down their faces. I think, she said slowly, I will need more data to understand this concept. Taiho smiled. Well, I'm happy to help. But I should warn you, love is complicated. It's probably going to take more than one conversation to explain. That is acceptable, Lyra said. She picked up her chopsticks and resumed eating. I have time. Outside the window, the holographic rain continued to fall. Inside the small apartment, 2 very different beings sat together, sharing a simple meal. And somewhere in Lyra's logical mind, a small seed had been planted. She did not know it yet. But that seed would grow into something neither of them expected, something that would change everything. The days that followed were different from before. Taiho noticed it right away. Lyra had always been curious about human behavior, but now her curiosity had a specific focus. She wanted to understand love. It started with small questions during breakfast. She would look up from her tea and ask things like, why do humans give flowers to people they care about? Flowers die quickly. It seems like a poor investment. Or, I read that humans write poetry for their romantic partners. Why would someone spend time arranging words in a specific pattern when they could simply say what they mean? Taiho did his best to answer. He explained that flowers were not about investment. They were about beauty and the thought behind the gift. He told her that poetry was a way of saying things that ordinary words could not express. He said that love made people want to create things, to give things, to do things that showed how much they cared. Lyra wrote everything down in a small notebook. She called it her research journal. Taiho thought it was adorable, but he kept that thought to himself. One evening, about 2 weeks after her first question, they were walking together through the station's recreation deck. It was a large open space filled with plants and artificial sunlight. Many humans came here to exercise or relax. Couples walked along the winding paths, some of them holding hands. Lyra stopped suddenly. She pointed at a young man and woman walking ahead of them. Their fingers were intertwined, and they were smiling at each other. What are they doing? Lyra asked. Holding hands, Taiho said. I can see that. But why are their hands cold? Do they need physical support to walk? Taiho chuckled. No, nothing like that. They're holding hands because they want to feel connected. It's a way of being close to someone, even when you're just walking. Lyra looked down at her own hands. So the physical contact serves no practical purpose? Not really. It just feels nice. When you hold hands with someone you care about, it makes you feel safe, happy, like you belong together. Lyra was quiet. She watched the couple disappear around a corner, then looked back at Taiho. There was something in her silver eyes that he could not quite identify. "See," she said softly. Then she continued walking, and Taiho followed. The lessons continued over the following weeks. Taiho found himself explaining concepts he had never really thought about before. He told Lyra about first dates, those nervous meetings where two people tried to learn if they liked each other. He described the feeling of waiting for a message from someone special, checking your communicator again and again, hoping to see their name. "That sounds inefficient," Lyra said. "Why not simply ask the person directly if they have romantic interest?" "Because it's scary," Taiho admitted. "What if they say no? What if you embarrass yourself? Love makes people vulnerable. And being vulnerable is hard." Lyra tilted her head. "Vulnerable? You mean exposed to potential harm?"
Exactly.
"When you love someone, you're giving them the power to hurt you. You're showing them your true self, even the parts you're not proud of. And you're trusting them not to use that against you. That seems very risky." "It is, but that's what makes it special. When someone loves you back, when they see all of you and accept all of you, it's the most amazing feeling in the world." Lyra wrote something in her notebook. Taiho noticed that she was writing more slowly than usual, as if thinking carefully about each word. One afternoon, they were sitting in the station's observation lounge, looking out at the stars. The view was beautiful, millions of tiny lights scattered across the darkness of space. Taiho came here often when he needed to think. "Tell me about butterflies," Lyra said suddenly. Taiho blinked. "What?" "In one of the human dramas I watched, a character said she felt butterflies when she saw the person she loved. But butterflies are insects. Small flying creatures. How can they be inside a human body?" Taiho laughed. He could not help it. The confusion on Lyra's face was genuine and somehow sweet. "It's not real butterflies," he explained. "It's a metaphor. When humans feel nervous or excited around someone they like, they sometimes feel a fluttering sensation in their stomach. It's like the feeling you get before something important happens. We call it butterflies because that's what it feels like. Little wings moving inside you." Lyra placed a hand on her abdomen. "That sounds uncomfortable. It is kind of, but it's also exciting. It means you care about someone so much that your body reacts before your brain catches up. Your heart beats faster. Your palms get sweaty. You might feel dizzy or have trouble speaking. Those are symptoms of illness," Lyra said flatly. "Yeah, but in this case, it's a good kind of sickness. When you feel butterflies around someone, it means they're special to you. It means your body knows something your mind hasn't figured out yet." Lyra was silent for a long moment. She stared out at the stars, her silver eyes reflecting their light. "I think I understand," she said finally. "Human love is not just a thought or a decision. It is a physical experience. The body and the mind work together." "Exactly," Taiho said. "You can't control it. You can't plan it. It just happens. And when it does, it changes everything." Lyra turned to look at him. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, something passed between them, something neither of them could name. Then Lyra looked away. She opened her notebook and began writing again. That night, alone in her room, Lyra reviewed her notes. She had filled many pages with observations about human love. She had written about holding hands and flowers and poetry and butterflies. She had recorded Taiho's words carefully, trying to understand each concept. But as she read through her notes, she realized something strange. Her notes were not just academic observations anymore. They were becoming something else. Something personal. She caught herself thinking about the way Taiho smiled when he explained things, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he laughed, the way his voice softened when he talked about love, as if it was something precious and fragile. She closed her notebook and pressed her hand against her stomach. There was nothing there, of course. No fluttering. No butterflies. And yet, for reasons she could not explain, she felt different, lighter, more aware of the space around her. She looked at the wall that separated her room from Taiho's. On the other side, she could hear him moving around, getting ready for bed. "Interesting," she whispered to herself. She did not sleep well that night. Her mind kept returning to their conversations, to his words, to the way he looked at her when he explained what it felt like to love someone. She told herself it was just scientific curiosity. She told herself she was simply gathering data. But somewhere deep inside, in a place she had never known existed, something was beginning to change, and she was not sure if she should be afraid or excited, perhaps both. Something was wrong with Lyra. She was certain of it. The symptoms had started small, so small that she almost missed them. A slight increase in her heart rate when Taiho entered the room. A strange warmth in her cheeks when he smiled at her. A feeling of disappointment when he left for work in the morning. Even though she knew he would return in the evening, at first, she thought she might be getting sick. Valorians rarely got sick, but it was not impossible. Perhaps she had caught some human illness. Perhaps the station's air filters were malfunctioning. She ran a diagnostic on her body using the medical scanner in her room. The results showed nothing wrong. Her vital signs were normal. Her immune system was functioning perfectly. According to the scanner, she was completely healthy. But she did not feel healthy. She felt strange, different, like something inside her had shifted out of place. The symptoms grew worse over the following days. When Taiho made her breakfast, she felt a warmth spread through her chest. When he laughed at something she said, she found herself wanting to make him laugh again. When his hand accidentally brushed against hers while they were watching a movie together, she felt a jolt of electricity run through her entire body. She did not understand any of it. One evening, she was working alone in her research lab. Taiho was on the other side of the station, attending a lecture about xenobiology. She should have been focused on her work. She had important data to analyze. But instead, she kept looking at the clock, counting the minutes until he would be back. This was unacceptable. This was irrational. This was not how a Valorian was supposed to behave. She decided to investigate. She opened the station's medical database and searched for information about her symptoms. The results were confusing. The database suggested several possibilities, including anxiety disorder, hormonal imbalance, and caffeine sensitivity. None of those seemed right. She searched the Valorian archives next. She found nothing useful. Her species did not experience these kinds of symptoms. They did not feel warmth in their cheeks or electricity in their hands. They did not count minutes until someone returned. Finally, reluctantly, she searched the human medical literature. She typed in her symptoms one by one. Increased heart rate around a specific person, warmth in the face, difficulty concentrating, desire for physical proximity, feelings of happiness and anticipation. The search results appeared on her screen. She read them carefully, then she read them again. Then she stood up so quickly that her chair fell over. "No," she said out loud. "That is not possible." According to the human medical literature, her symptoms matched something called romantic attraction. The articles described it as the early stages of falling in love. The physical responses, the emotional changes, the irrational thoughts, they were all signs that a person was developing deep feelings for someone else. But Lyra was not human. She was Valorian. Her species did not fall in love. They formed practical partnerships based on logic and mutual benefit. They did not feel butterflies or electricity or warmth. They were above such things, and yet the evidence was clear. Something was happening to her. Something that should have been impossible. She spent the next hour reading more articles. She learned about dopamine and serotonin, chemicals in the brain that created feelings of pleasure and happiness. She learned about the psychological stages of attraction from initial interest to deep emotional attachment. She learned that humans could not control who they fell in love with, that it was a process that happened naturally, without permission or planning. By the time she finished reading, her head was spinning. She heard the front door open. Taiho was home. Her heart rate immediately increased. Just like the articles said it would, she walked out of her room and found him in the kitchen, putting away groceries. He looked tired but happy. When he saw her, his face lit up with a smile. "Hey," he said. "How was your evening? Get a lot of work done?" Lyra opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. She just stood there, staring at him, her mind racing with impossible thoughts. Taiho's smile faded. He looked concerned. "Lyra, are you okay?" "I believe I am malfunctioning," she said. Her voice came out flat and strange. Taiho set down the groceries and walked toward her. "What do you mean? Are you sick?" "I am experiencing symptoms that are inconsistent with normal Valorian biology." She took a deep breath and began listing them, speaking in her most clinical tone. "My heart rate increases when you are present. My skin flushes a deeper shade of blue when you smile at me. I have difficulty concentrating on my work when I know you are nearby. I experience an irrational desire to be in close physical proximity to you, even when there is no practical purpose for such proximity." She paused. Her voice wavered slightly. "I have researched these symptoms extensively. According to human medical literature, they are consistent with the early stages of romantic attraction. But that is impossible. Valorians do not experience romantic attraction. We are not capable of it." Taiho was silent. He stared at her with an expression she could not read. His eyes were wide. His lips were slightly parted. Was he surprised? Confused? Afraid? Then, slowly, something changed in his face. The surprise faded. In its place came something else. Something soft. Something hopeful. "Lyra," he said gently, "I don't think you're malfunctioning. And what is wrong with me?" He stepped closer. Close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Her heart rate spiked again. She could hear her own pulse in her ears. "I think," Taiho said quietly, "you might be feeling those butterflies I told you about." Lyra's silver eyes went wide. She felt the blood rush to her face, turning her blue cheeks a deep shade of indigo. She had never blushed before. She had not even known she could blush. "That is impossible," she whispered. "Valorians do not experience this. We are not built for it. Our brains are not wired for emotional attachment." "Maybe," Taiho said, "you're different. Maybe something about being here, living with humans, learning about love. It changed something in you. That does not make scientific sense." "No, it doesn't." He smiled softly. "But like I told you before, not everything has to make sense to be real." Lyra stood frozen. Her logical mind was screaming at her, telling her this was wrong, that she should retreat, analyze the data, find a rational explanation. But another part of her, a part she had never known existed, wanted something else entirely. It wanted to stay right here, close to him, close to his warmth and his smile and the gentle sound of his voice. "I do not know what to do," she admitted. Her voice was barely a whisper. Taiho reached out and took her hand. His fingers were warm against her cool skin. She did not pull away. She could not. Yet. "You don't have to do anything right now," he said. "We can figure this out together, okay?" Lyra looked down at their joined hands. Then she looked up at his face, at the kindness in his eyes, at the gentle curve of his lips, for the first time in her life. "Okay," she said softly. Together, standing there in the small kitchen, holding hands with a human who had taught her about love. Lyra finally understood what all those dramas had been trying to show her. Love was not logical. It was not efficient. It could not be planned or controlled, but maybe, just maybe, that was what made it beautiful. For 3 days, Lyra avoided Taiho. She woke up early before the artificial sunrise filled their apartment with golden light. She ate breakfast alone in the station's cafeteria, choosing a corner table where no one would bother her. She spent her days locked in her research lab, staring at data that no longer seemed to matter. And at night, she waited until she heard Taiho go to his room before she quietly slipped into her own. She knew it was cowardly. She knew it was wrong, but she did not know what else to do. The feelings inside her were too big, too confusing. Every time she thought about facing Taiho, her stomach twisted into knots. Every time she remembered the way he had held her hand, her heart started racing so fast that she thought it might burst. She was not prepared for this. Her entire life, she had been taught to rely on logic, to analyze problems, to find solutions. But there was no logical solution to what she was feeling. There was no formula that could explain the chaos in her heart. On the first night, she lay awake in bed and stared at the ceiling. She told herself that she was being ridiculous. Taiho was just her roommate, just a human, just someone she had known for a few months. There was no reason to feel this way about him, but the logic did not help. The feelings remained. On the second night, she tried to meditate. Valorians were taught meditation from childhood. It was supposed to clear the mind and restore balance. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Taiho's face. His smile. The way he looked at her when he held her hand. The meditation did not work. On the third night, she sat alone in her room and cried. She did not even know Valorians could cry. The tears were warm against her cool blue skin, and they surprised her so much that she cried even harder. She was scared. More scared than she had ever been in her life. She had left her home planet. She had traveled across the galaxy. She had lived among aliens and learned their languages and studied their cultures. None of that had frightened her. But these feelings, this love, it terrified her. On the fourth day, Taiho found her. She was sitting on the observation deck, the one with the big windows that looked out at the stars. It was late in the evening, and most of the station's residents had gone to bed. Lyra had come here to be alone, to think, to try to make sense of everything. But then she heard footsteps behind her, and she knew who it was before she even turned around. "You've been avoiding me," Taiho said. His voice was gentle, not angry. He sat down on the bench next to her, leaving a small space between them. Lyra did not look at him. She kept her eyes on the stars. Yes, she admitted. There was no point in lying. Valorians were not good at lying. Can I ask why? She was quiet for a long moment. The stars outside seemed so far away. Millions of lights, millions of worlds, millions of lives. And here she was on this small station, feeling things she had never been meant to feel. "Because I am afraid," she said finally. Her voice was smaller than she had ever heard it. "Of what?" She turned to look at him then. His brown eyes were warm in the dim light, patient, kind, just like always. "Of this," she said. She gestured vaguely at the space between them. "Of everything I am feeling, of wanting something that my species was never supposed to want." Taiho listened without interrupting. He simply sat there, giving her space to speak. "I was taught that emotions are weakness," Lyra continued. "That logic is strength. That Valorians are superior because we do not let feelings control us. But now I am feeling things I cannot control, things I do not understand. And it scares me." She looked down at her hands. They were trembling slightly. "I think about you all the time," she admitted. "When I wake up, when I work, when I eat, you are always there in my thoughts. I want to be near you. I want to hear your voice. I want to see you smile." Her voice cracked. "I care about your presence more than I care about my research, more than I care about my career, more than I care about my entire reason for being on this station." She looked up at him again. Her silver eyes were wet with tears. "You asked me once why humans pursue love when it is painful and irrational. I think I understand now. It is because the alternative is worse. The alternative is emptiness. The alternative is going through life without feeling anything at all." Taiho reached out and took her hand. His fingers wrapped around hers gently, carefully, like she was something precious. "Lyra," he said softly, "I have something to tell you." She held her breath. "Those butterflies I told you about," he continued. "I've been feeling them too. Every single day since you moved in." Lyra stared at him. She was not sure she had heard correctly. "What?" "I didn't say anything because I didn't want to make things weird. You're my roommate. You're from a species that doesn't do emotions. I figured you could never feel the same way." He laughed quietly. "But then you started asking me about love, and you looked so curious, so genuinely interested. And I started hoping that maybe, somehow, things could be different." "You have feelings for me?" Lyra asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Yeah." Taiho smiled, a little shy, a little nervous. "I really do." Lyra felt something break inside her. Not in a bad way. In a good way. Like a wall crumbling down. Like a door opening to somewhere new. I do not know how to do this, she said. I do not know how to be in love. I have never done it before. Yeah. Neither have I, Taiho admitted. Not really. I mean, I've dated people before, but nothing serious. Nothing like this? This is different? Yeah, he squeezed her hand gently. This is different. They sat together in silence, looking out at the stars. Lyra's heart was still racing, but it was not fear anymore. It was something else. Something warmer. Something brighter. What do we do now? She asked. I don't know, Taiho said honestly. But I think we figure it out together. One step at a time. Lyra considered this. It was not a very logical plan. There were no clear objectives, no measurable outcomes, no defined metrics for success. But somehow, that was okay. One step at a time, she repeated. Then, slowly, carefully, she leaned her head against his shoulder. Taiho tensed for just a moment, surprised. Then he relaxed. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her closer. They stayed like that for a long time. Two people from different worlds, sitting together in the darkness. Watching the stars go by, Lyra did not know what the future would bring. She did not know if her species would accept what she was feeling. She did not know if she and Taiho would last forever, or even if forever was something she should want. But right now, in this moment, she knew one thing for certain. She was happy. And for the first time in her life, that was enough. 6 months had passed since that night on the observation deck. 6 months of learning. 6 months of growing. 6 months of falling deeper in love with each other, one small moment at a time. Taiho had taught Lyra how to hold hands properly, how to hug, how to sit close without needing a reason. Lyra had taught Taiho about Valorian poetry, about the beauty of logic and precision, about the quiet satisfaction of solving a complex problem they had cooked together, watched movies together, stayed up late talking about everything and nothing. They had fought a few times, small disagreements that felt enormous in the moment but faded quickly. They had learned how to apologize, how to forgive, how to be patient with each other's differences. It was not always easy. Love never was. But it was worth it. Every single day. And now, Lyra was about to share what she had learned with the rest of the galaxy. She sat in her research lab, staring at her computer screen. The document in front of her was complete. She had spent weeks writing it, revising it, making sure every word was perfect. The title read, An Empirical Analysis of Human Emotional Bonding and Its Cross-Species Implications. It was a research paper. The most important research paper of her life. In it, she described everything she had experienced. The physical symptoms of attraction, the psychological changes that came with falling in love, the way her Valorian brain, supposedly incapable of emotion, had adapted and grown to accommodate feelings she had never known existed. She included data, charts, graphs, medical scans showing the changes. In her brain chemistry over the past 6 months, testimonies from human doctors who had studied her case with fascination. The conclusion was simple, but revolutionary. Human love was not just a human phenomenon. It could spread. It could awaken dormant emotional capacities in other species. It could change the way beings from across the galaxy understood themselves and each other. Lyra took a deep breath and pressed the submit button. The paper was sent to the Galactic Scientific Journal, the most respected academic publication in the known universe. From there, it would be reviewed, published, and distributed to researchers on every major planet. There was no going back now. Taiho found her in the lab an hour later. He had flowers in his hand, bright yellow ones that he knew were her favorite. How do you feel? He asked, sitting down next to her. Nervous, she admitted. My people will not be happy. They believe emotions are weakness. They will say, I have been corrupted by humans. Are you scared? Lyra thought about it. Then she shook her head. No, she said. I am proud. What I have discovered is important. It could help people. It could change things. Taiho smiled and handed her the flowers. Then let's see what happens. What happened was beyond anything either of them could have imagined. The paper was published 3 weeks later. Within days, it had been downloaded over 2 million times. Within a week, it was being discussed on news channels across 12 star systems. Within a month, it had sparked a debate that divided entire planets. The Valorian Science Council was furious. They demanded that Lyra return home immediately for evaluation. They called her findings dangerous and irresponsible. They said she had brought shame upon her species. Lyra refused to go. She stayed on orbital station Hannah 7, with Taiho by her side. But while the Valorians rejected her work, others embraced it. Reports began trickling in from across the galaxy. A Kellian ambassador admitted in a public interview that he had experienced unusual attachment to his human colleague. A pilot from the Theva system described feelings of irrational protectiveness toward her human co-pilot. A scientist from a species that communicated only through mathematical equations wrote to Lyra, explaining that he had started having dreams about a human researcher he worked with, species that had always dismissed. Human emotions as primitive weaknesses were now forced to face an uncomfortable truth. Those emotions were spreading. And they were not as primitive as anyone had believed. Human media outlets went crazy. They called Lyra the alien who discovered love. They called her paper the most romantic research document ever published. They made movies about her story, wrote songs about her, turned her into a symbol of hope for the galaxy. Lyra did not care about the fame. She did not care about the controversy. She cared only about the message. And the message was simple. Love was not a weakness. It was a strength. It was the most powerful force in the universe, capable of bridging gaps between species, capable of changing minds that had been closed for centuries, capable of creating connections that logic alone could never achieve. Humans had known this all along. Now the rest of the galaxy was beginning to understand. One evening, about a year after the paper was published, Taiho and Lyra sat together in their apartment. The holographic rain was falling outside the window, just like it had on the night she first asked him about love. They had ramen for dinner, the same dish he had made for her so many times before. The news was playing on the screen in front of them. A reporter was interviewing a group of Valorian students who had started a movement supporting emotional expression. They called themselves the New Way, and they credited Lyra as their inspiration. You started an intergalactic emotional revolution, Taiho said, amused. Lyra shrugged. I merely documented my findings. The revolution started the day you made me ramen and explained what butterflies meant. Taiho laughed and pulled her closer. She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. This was her favorite position now. She had never known that something so simple could feel so good. For the record, he murmured into her hair, I'm really glad you asked that question. Lyra tilted her head up to look at him. Her silver eyes were warm in a way that no Valorians had ever been before. She had changed so much since that first night. They both had. As am I, she said softly. If I had not asked, I would never have known what I was missing. I would have lived my entire life thinking that logic was all there was. I would have missed this. I would have missed you. Taiho kissed the top of her head. A simple gesture. A human gesture. Something she had once found confusing, but now craved every day. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance. Ships flew between planets. Messages traveled at the speed of light. Billions of beings went about their lives, arguing and working and struggling and dreaming. And somewhere in the middle of it all, on a small space station orbiting a distant world, two people sat together. Eating noodles and watching the rain, they were different in almost every way. Different species, different backgrounds, different brains wired for different kinds of thinking. But none of that mattered anymore, because they had found something that transcended all those differences. Something that made the vast, cold universe feel a little bit warmer. They had found love. And in the end, that was all that mattered. In a galaxy full of logic and efficiency and cold calculation, humanity's greatest export had never been technology or resources. It was not their ships or their weapons or their scientific achievements. It was their hearts. Their beautiful, terrifying, irrational capacity to love, and now, thanks to one curious Valorian and one patient human, the entire galaxy was beginning to learn what that truly meant.